Welcome to the Relation Stitch podcast, where we discuss theoretical and spiritual principles related to relationships, marriages, family, and parenting. I'm your host, Clyde Fraley, licensed marriage and family therapist, with my wife and co-host, Stephanie. Let's get started.
Last episode, we spent a lot of time talking about what is love. Probably a pretty important topic for us to cover when we're talking about success in marriage and in relationships.
Too bad we didn't learn about that in graduate school.
Seriously. You think that would be one of those core fundamental classes like Marriage and Family Counseling Program 101, What is Love?
And what is marriage? They
And what is... They don't...
Just saying, you could have a class on it, and they didn't. So we're going to have to figure this out on our own, I guess.
That's
But
right.
we
That's
need
right.
some help.
I'm excited for us to now start talking about what is love? How do we define that in a way that is healthy, in a way that brings truth into it? Because we looked at all the ways that are not necessarily true.
And I think the biggest one is, just to recap some more, is we have this operational definition of what love is, and it's influenced by all kinds of things, our upbringing and by society and by culture and by arts and entertainment and all of these things. So what we need is like, where's the truth? What's the
Right.
time tested, a model that we can always go to that's concrete.
Right.
And that's in the Bible. So do you want to read 1 Corinthians chapter 13, 4?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great place for us when we start thinking about and actually defining what love is, because and even if, let's say, somebody out there is saying, well, gosh, I'm not a very spiritual or I'm not a very biblical person. I challenge you as we read these that find an area in which these principles don't benefit your marriage and give you really just a much healthier perspective. So let's go ahead and read it. We're reading out of the NIV translations. This is 1 Corinthians 13, starting with verse number 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Man, that is so powerful when you think about that. And I know often we see this scripture in context of how maybe God loves us and how we love God, and maybe even how we love just others in our life. But when we really look at that and think of it from a marriage perspective, man, there's so much power in that.
Yeah, you can actually quantify how much love you're giving your partner by breaking those words down and figuring out, am I being patient? And this is what patience looks like. And this is what patience is not. And then if you're circling more antonyms than synonyms for the way that you're acting with your partner, that's one area that you need to work on.
Yeah.
But I agree that if you're not a spiritual person at all, you have to at least acknowledge that every one of those characteristics of love are going to benefit your relationship. Kindness and perseverance and all the things that you just read, So I'll just read the definition of patience here. The bearing of provocation, annoyance, or pain without complaint, loss of temper, or irritation. I think it's interesting that the Bible lists patience as the first one, because I think every other virtue after that supports patience.
Yeah.
So a piece of patience is kindness.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Right? Because
Yeah.
it says without loss of temper or irritation.
Right.
So patience is a time piece,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a self-control piece.
Oh, yeah. That's true. You know what I think is kind of interesting, I'm totally going to just tell on myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that sometimes I can be more patient with our kids than what maybe I could be with you. And I think part of that has to do with oh, they're kids. I can give them more grace. I can give them more patience because my expectation of what they should or should not be doing is influencing my level of patience that I'm willing to apply to that, right? But especially over time, when you've been with somebody, we've been married for 26 years now, been together 28. Over time, you start to develop, well, he should know this by now, immediately lowering the tolerance for patience, right? But I think what a great reminder is when we're coming at our relationship from a position of love, like you just said, patience is the leader in that. Patience is the first thing we talk about because, to your point, it influences all the rest. I mean, right in the definition you gave it, what it says, the bearing of provocation, annoyance, or pain without complaint,
Without complaint.
loss of temper, or irritation. And we just talked about that. It does not dishonor others. It is not easily angered. I mean, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. So patience, again, it's a timepiece, so you have to wait.
Right.
And so waiting can be hard because there can be three different outcomes. And waiting it's a stressor. So you have these three outcomes. You can have a negative outcome, a positive outcome, or a neutral outcome. And so while you're waiting, your frustration could come a lot quicker if it's a negative outcome. Let's say you're waiting on a diagnosis from your doctor. And so you need patience because you have to wait on that.
Right.
And that can bring a lot of anxiety and stress. Another one is a positive outcome, like Christmas is around the corner and kids, they're waiting for their gifts and they have to be patient and they're over there shaking the box and all of that, know. And so a neutral one is kind of like you waiting for the microwave to ding. You
Right.
put the popcorn in there and you got to wait 3 minutes,
Right.
And so patience in relationships is the same way. And I think a way that we can help ourselves be more patient is, first of all, working on ourselves and being able to control our emotions.
Yeah.
Emotional regulation is key because the more I can keep myself centered, the better I am at critically thinking. And you can think about those outcomes. And when you work on yourself, you're also setting yourself up in life to have better outcomes. And so patience can be a little bit easier, right? So if you take care of your life, and let's say you're good about paying your bills and you're good about maintaining your home and all these things, maintaining your life, you know that the outcome of that is going to be better than if you ignore that.
Right. Right.
And that is the purpose of stress, not anxiety.
Right.
The purpose of stress is that's nature or your body or your mind's way of telling you you have unfinished business, go take care of it. Like I have an exam in 2 weeks, well, I'll have a lot of stress with that. The stress is telling you to go study and prepare for that.
Right.
And that's how you manage, and that's another patience thing, because they did a study about that. Students reacted differently before the test than the time that they submitted their exam and they got their results. So students almost always react the same from the time they hit submit to the time they get their grade.
Okay.
But it varied between the time that the test, when they had to study and when they took the test, because some students were proactive and they did their homework and they read and they were ready for the exam.
Right.
And so that helped them manage that. And so we have to do the same thing in our relationships. The more we manage our relationships, the better outcomes we're going to have. And you won't have so many negative outcomes on the other side.
Yeah. So let me ask you this and tell me if this would be a good technique. What if in the posture of trying to promote more patience, instead of seeking after all of the areas where our partner hasn't lived up to our expectation, but instead looking for the areas, the glimmers of hope, looking for those areas where they're showing progress, starting to like intentionally change our focus to not be thinking about the thing that I have to be patient for, but being more intentional about seeing the growth, seeing the progress, seeing the movement towards a better outcome. Would that be helpful?
If you can see your relationship from this global perspective, all the strengths and the weaknesses, and you get a better overarching idea of the health of your relationship in general,
Right.
absolutely that gives you the strength to know, especially like if you have that point of view and you can see a lot of growth in your partner in other areas, then that gives you confidence that they're working on themselves, they're working in the relationship, and that there can be growth in other areas,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of times in a relationship, we kind of focus on certain things at certain times of our life, you know? And so if you're newly married, you're working on maybe getting a house and getting your career off the ground. And a lot of your focus is there, and that improves while other ones are a little bit left behind because
Right.
there's not as much focus. And then you have kids, and then all the focus is on the kids, right? And so intimacy drops during that time because you don't have the energy or the time to spend on that. And then you become empty nesters.
Right.
And so now it's time to refocus on that.
Yeah.
But if you know that your partner is committed to the relationship,
Right.
and you see that growth in these different areas, you know that you can get through it.
So less of you didn't take out the trash and more of, I'm noticing he's really stepping up and helping out more. Or less of you spent how much money on groceries and more on, okay, I'm noticing that, we're going to get coffees a bit less often. We're trying to be more diligent with how we're managing our budget. And I think that definitely creates an environment that promotes far more patience and, ability to work through for that common goal of a better relationship.
So in marriage, we talked about in the first episode about being in unity. And in a relationship, patience requires y'all to work together.
Yeah.
And what can happen is you can become impatient, and then you can become selfish and try to take control of the situation and circumvent your partner
Right.
because you want to control an outcome that maybe is in your favor.
Right.
And that can be detrimental because there's something you're afraid of. There's afraid of a loss. I'm afraid I'm going to lose whatever it could be.
Right.
Power in the relationship, control in the relationship, and so a lot of times those things are so important to us. We want to control it, and we don't have faith in our partner to make decisions with us or for us in our favor or in favor of the relationship. So we
Right.
take control of that ourselves.
Yeah. And it actually becomes counterproductive because now your partner has no opportunity to demonstrate their ability to step up or to display the type of outcome that together you're wanting. Just totally undercut their their opportunity to do that.
I'm thinking about when we bought our house, how we had the
Which
ups
one?
and downs. The one we're in right now.
Yes.
It took a year or more for us to go through this process, and it took a lot of patience.
Yes.
And so what was great about how we handled that was there was times I was really impatient, but you were patient, you know? And so that's the power in unity is, we can level each other out.
Right.
And there was times where you were getting really impatient and I would have all this patience, and we just kept we kept leveling each other out,
Right.
and it kept us on track and it kept us level headed and we were able to make good decisions all the way through it. But once you get out of that place where you disregard your partner's input, you're right, it becomes counterproductive.
So now I understand you see our marriage as a teeter-totter.
It is.
It
When
is.
you're dieting, I'm not.
That's
When I'm exercising, you're not. That's just how it goes,
yes.
But it encourages each other, and we
As long
eventually
as
reach
we're-
our goals.
As long as we're on the same teeter-totter, it's all right. It'll work itself out.
Yeah, so our life is a
Just
teeter-totter.
don't launch me into outer space, would you?
Am I that fat? No. Where I can sit on the teeter-totter and launch you into the stratosphere?
I was thinking more of you like just falling over and well, whatever. So now let's talk about kindness.
Kindness.
Kindness. Kindness is just being nice, right?
In part, but being nice is me being polite, and just, a good disposition. But kindness goes into more of an action where, again, I'm being selfless and I'm thinking about you and I'm actually doing things to help you. It's kind of like being altruistic. You're going to help someone without needing a reward or
Right.
anything in return other than that feel good feeling that you get when you do that.
Right. So I heard this great antidote, and I wish I could remember. It was on Instagram somewhere. I wish I could remember who said it because I would be happy to give them credit. But I thought it just brilliantly demonstrated for me kindness. And what they said is living inside of your husband, and you can absolutely make this about your wife as well, but this person was talking about it in perspective of their husband. Inside of your husband is a fool and a king. Who you choose to speak to is who's going to show up. And to me, I just thought that was a great way to demonstrate kindness. If I'm speaking to you as a king, giving you honor, giving you kindness, speaking in good words, that's going to create and prompt in you a completely different response than if I'm speaking not out of kindness. It's going to create a different person that shows up in that moment. And that's the same for women too. Either a fool or a queen, whomever you choose to speak to is who's going to show up in that moment. And for me, I was like, man, that is just such a great picture of demonstrating and how we can think about kindness in our interactions with our spouse.
So I'm a king and you're a queen, and we have to pull that out of one another.
Exactly. Yeah. And whomever you're speaking to is the one that's going to show up in that moment.
And imagine how that impacts your children when they hear
Yes.
you, talking to each other that way with
Right.
respect and with honor and, pulling the best out of one another.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So Charles Glassman says that kindness begins with the understanding that we all struggle.
Oh, that's good.
And I was thinking about that with relationships, and I have this theory, and I've kind of termed it dispositional needs.
Okay.
And what that is we all have these needs that are greater than, let's say, the general population would have
Okay.
based on your experiences and based on what you experienced growing up, especially when you were a kid. And so, for example, you might, if you have an anxious attachment style and there's a deep fear of abandonment there, then you're going to have a greater need than maybe your neighbor for reassurance in the relationship and validation. And you need your partner to tell you often that, they love you and they're supporting you. And then you're doing those things to show them that you're there for them and instilling trust and all of that. And I think that's what kindness is also, is understanding your partner. Like it says here, understanding that we all struggle and we all have these struggles. And so what kindness is me understanding you to such a level that I know what your dispositional needs are. I know what mine are. I need a lot of validation, and you are great at giving me that. And that's being kind. And also what I have to do for you is acknowledge that and say thank you. And then I also have to do the same for you.
Yeah.
That there's certain needs that you have, and I have to meet those needs for you. And so I think if we can do that, and that takes selflessness too,
Yeah.
right? It takes a lot of patience. And a big piece of the patience is you getting to know your partner and having conversations to where you know what those needs are, and
Yeah.
you know their history and you know their stories. So knowing the context of their life allows you to do that.
So yeah, we had very, very different upbringings. And a great example, you love American cheese. I think it's disgusting.
It's American and it's cheese.
Well, yes,
Clearly, I'm right here.
But, when when you were younger, your family struggled and, you had to make decisions on, buying food that let's just get the job done, not necessarily the best nutritional value or best tasting, So, but my family was a little different. My mom was very health conscious. And so, American cheese was as equivalent to as the devil. And and no, we're not going to have that fake crap in our house. That's ridiculous. So, but knowing the context of each other's lives and what you faced as a child helps me to understand even how you approach life and situations now, because you're going to always want the best for our kids because you didn't have as much and you want them to have a better life. And I'm always going to say, okay, like that's not even the concept of them having a better life isn't as big pronounced for me because we were for the most part upper middle class. We lived a very comfortable life. And so my focus is always on they need to be prepared for life. They need to, be equipped. And if it means that they have to sacrifice something in order to get a better value or outcome out of achieving that in a different way, then that's the benefit. So when we think about that, then it really does help us better understand how our partner is going to be approaching a life situation because we've taken the time to understand not only the context of their lives, but what did that create in them? What was that feeling, that emotion that makes that so important to them? Like, why do you insist on putting American cheese on something when clearly cheddar is better?
And the other awesome thing about that, and we're kind of rabbit trailing here, but I'm okay with it, is you had a specific way of growing up, and mine was different. And if we fight too hard for our own position to have our kids have the same experience that we have, that's going to create conflict. But what you should do is join the two and create something unique. So Grace loves American cheese, but she also eats the good stuff too. So we've come, you know, we
Yeah.
have a combination and we've created our own culture that's different.
Right.
Like growing up, we didn't have the fancy stuff.
Right.
And growing up, you didn't have the cheaper stuff, you know?
Right.
But in our house, we have both.
Right.
And that's unique
Right.
to our family.
Right.
And our kids have a much richer experience for that. And that crosses over into things like traditions and rituals.
Right.
Like your Christmases were different than my Christmases.
Right.
But we combined a little bit of yours with a little bit of mine. And now we have something that's unique
Yeah.
to our family.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And this swings us all the way into we're being kind to one another by letting each other have influence. I let my wife have influence over me, and she lets me have influence over her. And when we combine that, we create this awesome
Yeah.
little unique family, you know, and our kids have a richer experience for it.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Can we go through the synonyms and the antonyms of those just to kind of tie a bow on those and to just leave us with a really good picture of what do those look like and how we can apply them?
Yeah, so I'm going to have this graphic that y'all can download. And I'm breaking down the English definition, what the Greek definition of the word is in the Bible, and then synonyms and antonyms, and then that attribute in action. All right. And so for patience, the synonyms are composure, self-possession, and stability. Those are good.
Those are real good.
The antonyms are impatient, defiance, and resistant. And so if you look at your relationship in that in the category of patience, you can kind of break it down, like I said earlier, and like, am I more impatient and am I defiant and resistant towards my partner more than I'm, stable and composed?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you circle more antonyms than you do synonyms, you have some work to do. So what are the kindness ones? Do you have that there?
Yeah, the kindness synonyms: compassionate, tender, gentle, benign, and mild. And the antonyms: cruel, unfeeling, selfish, heartless, and thoughtless. And I think it's good to not only reflect on how you see them, but also I think it's a great conversation to have with your partner to say, how do you see me approaching these? Are you seeing more kindness or more cruelty?
I do that in therapy, actually. Most of my questionnaires, I'll give them the same questionnaire and phrase it in a way where, first or third party
Yeah.
position, because I don't want to know just how you think about it. I want to know also how your partner perceives it.
That's
So
good.
it's called the audit, and it measures how much alcohol you drink. And so I'll have the person who I think has a drinking problem take it, and they'll score it, and then I'll ask their partner to score it as if from their point of view, and then I'll match them, and the partner will usually be like, no, this is actually what you're drinking, because we have that bias,
Right.
and we
Don't
want to
wanna look
preserve
bad.
ourselves. Exactly. And so that's a great exercise to do. It's like, this is how I see it. How do you see it? And then you compare the two, and it's probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And so we have that egocentric bias that we need to work on, because we see it from our point of view, and we have these blind spots. And so that's a great idea, Steph.
So next episode, looking forward to it, we'll start tackling it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. And maybe we can throw in some dishonor and not self-seeking with that too.
We may not even get past the first one. What's the first one again?
It does not envy.
Yeah, those are, man.
Man, this may go from a 2-part series to a 20-part series.
Yeah, it's going to take a few episodes,
Yeah.
but I think it's worth it.
It is.
This is the foundation of marriage.
Yeah.
And if we can nail all this stuff and,
Yeah.
and really improve on all of these things, you're gonna see great growth in your relationship. I
Yeah.
really believe that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So looking forward to that. Look for the next episode. So Clyde, if someone wants to come and spend some time with you and get some therapy for their relationship, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just go to ClydeFraley.com, and there's a link there, and you can go to my scheduler, and you can see my availability and all the pricing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm in Conroe, so I serve quite a wide area around there, Woodlands, and people from Huntsville and Tomball and Cypress. They all make the drive. So
Anywhere in the Houston area, basically.
yeah, basically. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. And these infographics that we shared today, these will be on relationstitch.com.
Relationstitch.com.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Great. Love you, baby.
Love you. Thank you for joining us today. Visit relationstitch.com for free downloadable worksheets related to this episode and to access our relationship courses. If you're struggling in your relationship, go to relationstitch.com to leave a prayer request or to schedule a therapy session with Clyde.